Before we begin, I want to let you know that today's event is being recorded. If you're uncomfortable or otherwise do not consent to being recorded, please allow this to serve as your notice to disconnect from Zoom now, and you can catch the session when we upload it to YouTube later this week. 2026, as I'm certain you already know, is the semiquincentennial, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, of the birth of the United States of America. Revolution Untold uncovers the overlooked stories of the cradle of democracy, of the people that shaped the nation right here in Williamsburg, Virginia. Revolution Untold is generously sponsored by the Williamsburg 250 Commission, William and Mary Strategic Cultural Partnerships, and the Society of 1918 at William and Mary, and is made possible in part by a grant from the Virginia 250 Commission in partnership with Virginia Humanities. This afternoon's session is the first of 4 Zoom Lunch and Learns we'll be leading. For more information about upcoming sessions, please visit our website and subscribe to our newsletter at wm.edu/scp. I'm very pleased this afternoon to introduce you to Jacob Brown, class of 2026, English and History major. Jacob is from Tomball, Texas. He's a resident assistant and arts box office worker who's currently writing his honors thesis. Today, Jacob is going to take us through the process and product of his research into Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley. We'll give Jacob about 20 minutes to talk you through his research, and then we'll have to open the virtual floor to your questions and comments. If you have thoughts that pop up during his presentation, post them into the chat window. I'll be monitoring that while Jacob speaks. And now, without further ado, I'm very, very pleased to turn the event over to Jacob.
Well, thank you, Danny. Hey, y'all. As Danny mentioned, my name is Jacob Brown, and I'm a senior English and history student here at William and Mary. Today, I have the honor of talking to you about Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley and my work for Revolution Untold. Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley is best known as a midwife who practiced in Williamsburg and its surrounding areas for nearly 4 decades. Upon her death in October 1771, the Virginia Gazette, a newspaper printed here in Williamsburg, published Blaikley's obituary, which described her as, quote, an eminent midwife who, in the course of her practice, brought upwards of 3,000 children into the world. Mm-hmm. This is a remarkable claim. I mean, 3,000 children, that's quite a lot. If the claim is true, Blaikley would have delivered about a child or two every single week for about 4 decades. To put this another way, the number of children she is said to have delivered, 3,000, is equal to the entire population of Williamsburg at the time of her death, and then some. My purpose in telling Catherine Blaikley's story is not to prove or disprove that claim. I don't really care if it's completely true or not. But I do want to use this claim to help demonstrate how important Blaikley and other midwives were to life in colonial Virginia. I think they were really important.
Thank you.
Before I get into the nitty-gritty of my research, I want to take a minute or two to kind of sketch out the basics of Catherine Blaikley's life. Catherine Kaidyee was born in York County, Virginia, around 1695, though we don't know for sure, to William and Martha Kaidyee. In September 1718, she married William Blaikley, a wealthy watchmaker from James City County. Together, the Blaikleys had 5 children, 3 daughters and 2 sons. However, neither of their sons survived to adulthood. William Blaikley died in 1736 after 18 years of marriage. As they had no adult sons, Catherine Blaikley inherited much of her husband's wealth, including land in Powhatan County, which is east of Richmond, and Brunswick County on the Virginia-North Carolina border, alongside some property in Williamsburg and York County. By 1739, Catherine Blaikley was a practicing midwife in Williamsburg and the surrounding areas, though her practice could have started in the years prior. She continued her midwifery practice until her death in October 1771. To create this basic biographical sketch of Catherine Blaikley's life, I looked through surviving wills, estate inventory, some gathered by Blaikley herself, church records, and also some very helpful genealogical collections. Creating this basic biography of Catherine Blaikley was essential in the early stages of my research. by sort of mapping out this information, I not only got to know Blaikley better, but I also began to find points of interest and further inquiry that would produce a more fleshed out narrative of Blaikley and her significant role in the greater Williamsburg community. Through my research, I kept coming back to Blaikley's role as a midwife, especially given the 3,000 babies claim, as I refer to it. Much of my work focused on trying to figure out as much as I could about Blaikley's medical practices and the field of midwifery in colonial Virginia in general. Unfortunately, there are no surviving diaries, journals, logs, or ledgers that were kept by Blaikley herself, though I'm sure she did keep something or another. Instead, to understand Blaikley's role as a midwife, I relied on medical texts from the period, accounts made by other midwives living at the same time as Blaikley, and a few mentions of Blaikley that do appear throughout the record, including in some ledger books from the time. I was also really interested in Blaikley's position within Williamsburg economy as a wealthy, landed working woman and widow. As mentioned, no personal documents of Blaikley's have survived, but there are several extant documents that prove Blaikley was incredibly involved in the Williamsburg community and largely seemed to have taken control of her finances on her own. Having found these kind of points of interests, that is, colonial midwifery and Blaikley's position as a wealthy landed widow, I also had to consider what kind of larger themes stood out in Blaikley's story that would resonate with people today, especially now as we reflect back on our history as a nation. Again and again, I kept returning to the ideas of freedom and independence. Very fitting. Catherine Blaikley chose her occupation. She made an income for herself. She owned and managed her land, and she spent money for items that she needed and she wanted, and was very involved in her and her family's legal matters. Blaikley was independent, and she had the freedom to make her own social, financial, and legal decisions at a time when women were not always privy to these freedoms. This is remarkable to me, and I really wanted to explore these themes further in Blaikley's life and let these guide me as I told her story. As I mentioned, midwifery as a medical practice is critical to understanding the life of Catherine Blaikley. In 18th century Virginia, midwives were vital medical practitioners providing essential care for women of all ages. As a profession, midwifery was dominated by women in colonial America, giving women a rare opportunity to earn a living independently. Women in colonial Virginia had many ways they could become midwives. They could watch and help out other midwives. They could learn under male physicians. They could attend lectures and even dissections. And they could also read medical texts specifically intended to be used by women training to become midwives. Oh, sorry. While we do not know exactly how Blaikley actually became a midwife or when exactly she started training for this, we know from an advertisement placed by another midwife around Blaikley's the end of her life, that some prominent doctors in Williamsburg were providing some sort of instruction in midwifery for women interested in becoming midwives. Additionally, we know that some medical guides for midwives were published in colonial Virginia and Williamsburg, including Nicholas Culpepper's Directory for Midwives, which I'll come back to in just a minute or two. After completing their training, midwives would be called on for medical assistance for a number of issues. While we may think that midwives, especially in the 18th century, only really helped women in childbirth, midwives actually held knowledge of all sorts of gynecological matters. Yes, midwives did help women in childbirth, but they also provided women with remedies for infertility. They provided medical consultation regarding menstruation and general reproductive care, and they also provided prenatal and postpartum care. Though I could not end up including it in my script for the final video for Revolution Untold, I thought it might be fun to share some of the medical advice that I found while doing my research, specifically in the Directory for Midwives that was published here in Williamsburg during Blaikley's time. I am going to warn some of it may be a little gross, but it's really interesting. Um, Midwives could instruct couples in how to perform a fertility test. To test for fertility, they would take some barley, and they would soak it in the urine of a husband and wife for 24 hours. Then they would divide the barley into two flower pots and like replant the barley. And then the barley would then be watered every morning, one by the man and one by the woman. And the growth of the barley plant equated with fertility. So if the barley did not grow, that would indicate infertility. Quote, to inject the juice of a plantain into the womb, unquote, with a syringe was a sort of catch-all remedy for anything from uterine inflammation or discomfort to irregular menstruation. Finally, there were also countless tinctures that could be used to help out during childbirth. For example, leek juice with warm water and various herbal mixtures with white wine were thought to cause speedy delivery. Um, so yeah, there were a lot of different things that midwives knew. They had this wide store of knowledge that they could use to treat a wide variety of issues. Um, Catherine Blaikley would have utilized these and similar medical practices, procedures, and remedies throughout her time as a midwife. Another important element of Blaikley's work as a midwife was the reach of her practice. While she lived and practiced in Williamsburg, she also provided her services to the more rural neighboring areas. For instance, one of the few places Blaikley appears in the historical record is the ledger book of Carter Burwell. Burwell was a prominent Virginia politician and a wealthy plantation owner. Blaikley is noted as having provided Burwell with her services at his plantation, Carter's Grove, which is a few miles down the James River. By providing her services to such a prominent family so early in her career, Blaikley ensured the longevity and impact of her practice, providing care for women beyond the confines of Williamsburg. Excuse me. As a midwife, Catherine Blaikley, like I said, provided essential care for women in her community and in surrounding areas for several decades. Blaikley and other midwives truly made life possible for women in colonial Virginia. But it is also important to consider what Blaikley did beyond her profession. She is not just a midwife, she is so many other things. She played an active role in her local economy, for instance, which her inherited wealth and her independently earned income supported. In 1769, Blaikley placed an advertisement in the Virginia Gazette for a pocketbook, something akin to like a purse or a wallet that she had lost. Though surely this was an upsetting inconvenience for Blaikley, her advertisement is incredibly useful for us, especially as historians, to kind of understand the kinds of economic activities that she was involved in because she lists all the things that were in her pocketbook. And also, this advertisement really stood out to me in my research because it's one of the only, if not the only thing that still exists that is Blaikley's voice herself. She presumably wrote this advertisement, so that's especially meaningful. So, as I mentioned, her pocketbook, by looking at it, we can understand the kind of economic activities she was involved in. For one, the purse is described importantly as a red Morocco pocketbook. That she needed this pocketbook demonstrates a need to keep track of transactions and money, and its material, dyed Morocco leather, makes this a sort of luxury item, meaning that Blaikley had the ability and desire to purchase these luxury goods, and she made these decisions on her own. Additionally, the advertisement notes various receipts and paper money within her pocketbook, further illustrating her economic abilities. And lucky for us, she also mentions a quote, memorandum about some drugs, unquote, that she would have purchased for her medical practice, probably at an apothecary either here in Williamsburg or in Yorktown. And she would have, from the apothecary, she would have purchased maybe pre-made tinctures or some other drugs to use, again, in her practice. So not only could Blaikley independently move throughout the Williamsburg marketplace, but she also had the ability and freedom to purchase items she needed to live, items she needed for her work, and also luxury items that she wanted. Blaikley also played an active role in managing the wealth and property she inherited from her husband. In December 1738, for instance, she placed a notice in the Virginia Gazette that she was selling her property in Brunswick County. Blaikley herself chose to sell this property, and she maintained control of the sale, playing an active role in the purchase of this land and the advertisement of this land. As I have already sort of alluded to, Blaikley also had a lot of legal responsibility and independence. Not only did she inherit her husband's wealth, but she also was named the executrix of his will, meaning that she saw to the division of his assets and to the filing of necessary legal documents, including estate inventories, which basically, when her husband would have died, she would have had to go through all of the valuable things that he owned and wrote it all out and submitted it to the court. That's an estate inventory. When her brother, John Kaidyee, died in 1742, she was likewise named the executrix of his will as well, which I think that she's constantly brought up as an executrix of his will. She's on other legal documents, kind of shows the trust that people had in her in these legal situations and her major involvement in these matters. In executing her brother's wishes, in executing his will, Blaikley actually got involved in some legal troubles. A man named Peter Hay claims that John Kaidyee had intended to leave him money in his will, but this was not mentioned in the will. So he sued Catherine Blaikley for the inheritance he believed he was entitled to. Hay and Blaikley went to trial, and ultimately the jury ruled in favor of Hay, and Blaikley was forced to give him some money out of Kaydie's estate. Though Blaikley was unsuccessful in her trial, her involvement is still important. She was able to stand up for herself and hire a legal team to defend her. Side note here, Peter Hay was actually a physician in Williamsburg, and he was also what they call a man midwife. That is, he was a male doctor who also performed services like that of a midwife. Though midwives at this time were still typically women, there was an increasing amount of man midwives in the latter half of the 18th century, and by the end of the 1700s, man midwives actually became more popular, especially in urban centers. Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley's life is an incredible one. And with all the information I found about Blaikley and midwives and colonial women's involvement in colonial economic and legal systems, I had to kind of filter through everything and pick out the strongest, most meaningful moments and narratives from Blaikley's life when I began writing my script for Revolution Untold. Firstly, I knew I needed to prioritize moments in Blaikley's life that exist in the archive. While we may be able to speculate a little about Blaikley's life, for the script to work and for the message of the script to be as faithful to Blaikley herself as possible, fact and archive needed to be prioritized. But as I mentioned before, Blaikley is not in the archive that much. So to kind of help with this, I turned to broader sources, contemporaneous sources about similar individuals, and scholarship that has already been done. By combining these various sources, I was able to bolster the strongest pieces of evidence in archival records about Blaikley and her life, and not make erroneous assumptions about Blaikley. Guiding my integration of the sources and narrative voice were the themes I established in the beginning: freedom and independence. I knew these were important elements of Blaikley's stories, and I allowed these themes to guide my crafting of a narrative. When moving from research to script, there were also some practical issues I had to consider. My research was for a short video, so I had to make a conscious decision of what information was compelling and important to furthering my narrative of Blaikley's life that also captured the themes of freedom and independence. Also, I needed to consider who exactly would tell the story of Catherine Blaikley. Would it be some omniscient narrator, someone being interviewed about Blaikley, or possibly even Blaikley herself? At first, when I started writing, I tried to go with just a narrator recounting Blaikley's narrative, but it didn't really work. It didn't capture Blaikley the way that I imagined. Instead, I opted to write using both a narrator and Blaikley herself. So now, while things are introduced and connected to the themes of the piece by a narrator, it is Blaikley herself telling her story and her experiences. Blaikley's voice is not really present in the archive. So, in having her tell her own story, I hope in some small way I have managed to restore her narrative and give her a voice. I also had to consider the audience for this project. The videos generated from Revolution Untold will be consumed by hopefully a wide array of people with all ages, backgrounds, and levels of education. These stories are for everyone, and as someone involved in other public facing humanities projects, this was an extremely important element to keep in mind. It meant a lot to me. I want all people to take away something from Blaikley's story, especially those who do not know anything about Blaikley or midwifery or really anything about the opportunities for colonial women, especially in Williamsburg. I would like to end by considering the legacy of Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley. When the Virginia Gazette claimed that she delivered 3,000 children during her time as a midwife, the editors of the paper encapsulated the incredible knowledge, influence, and respect of Catherine Blaikley in her community. As a midwife, she gained an independent income and great respect for providing vital medical services to her community. Fittingly, to this day, a reconstruction of her house sits in colonial Williamsburg. It is a property she owned and managed herself, and it continues to bear the name Mrs. Catherine Blaikley. Blaikley was a woman of great independence, and through her spirit of self determination and freedom, she helped deliver a generation of young independent seekers who would fight for and found a new nation now celebrating its 250th year. Thank you.
Jacob, that was terrific. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'd like to open it now to questions from the audience. Just make sure you please unmute yourself and come on camera when you want to ask your question. And to get us started off, Jacob, I have a particular question for you. You are a history student, of course. How has working on this project changed the way you think about the revolution or think about history or think about doing the process of public history?
Mm-hmm. So I think this has kind of changed how I view. I think I'll start with thinking about the revolution. Like Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley is someone who you might not necessarily think of as directly connected to the revolution, to this great political movement. But Catherine Blaikley kind of represents all of the women that supported life in the American colonies in America. Her and other midwives ensured that children were born, that they were taken care of. She and other midwives saw to the care of women in their day-to-day life. So really, without women like Catherine Kaidyee Blaikley, there would not have been people to fight a revolution for there to be anything like that. In terms of public history, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I am involved with another like public facing humanities project. So I've been thinking a lot about how do we get information to other people, and I think this project has been really insightful for me because I mean I did research like I normally would for any other like project that I would do. I went to the archive, I read like scholarship online, I looked at digital archives. I compiled everything as I would, but then when writing, I had to think about things a little bit differently. I couldn't go off on these very academic tangents. It needed to be very concise to the point and also accessible to people. So I think just having the opportunity to do this and to try this out and just the act of writing itself, I think really beneficial and helped me see how public history is done and made.
It's a great answer, Jacob. Thank you very much. I'd love to open it up to our guests. If you have any questions for Jacob, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. No.
I have a question, and I was just going to turn on my screen here. It's more of a comment. My name's Cindy Jordan, and I'm joining from Walnut Creek, California today. I'm a member of Society of 1918, and that's how I got the information on this. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Uh, so my comment is I'm really looking forward to getting the video and sharing this with my book club. I don't know, we recently read a book called The Frozen River in our book club. It is about Martha Ballard, who's a midwife in Maine, in historical fiction. Martha Ballard, midwife in Maine, in around the same time period. And we just read the book in December. And so it's really nice to have this counterpoint of a Virginia midwife. So thank you for your information and your research. I was wondering, I'm not hugely familiar with the Revolution Untold series and the video project. Can you talk a little bit more about that and when the videos will be available?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to do that. About a year ago, Strategic Cultural Partnerships at William and Mary was approached by the city of Williamsburg with an idea for a semi-quincentennial themed project. And we pitched them on a project called Revolution Untold. This project is going to be bringing between 7 and 8 lesser known stories from Williamsburg and the surrounding area to William and Mary students who have been doing research for about the last 6 months and turning that research into scripts, which are being delivered to the city of Williamsburg. A couple of our friends at the city of Williamsburg and the Williamsburg 250 Commission, who are going to be turning those scripts and media packages into short form videos about 3 to 5 minutes a piece. Right now, we're targeting late April for completion of those videos. We are in the process. In fact, we sent out today offers for voiceover talent to a number of folks from Williamsburg, both the William and Mary and the broader Williamsburg community, and indeed from across the country for some of our professional voiceover artists who have their own studios. We have wrapped up writing the scripts, and we have sent those to the city, and I'm meeting with my friends at the city tomorrow to talk through the production aspect of this. So we're really interested in telling the sort of hidden histories, the lesser known stories of the people who dramatically impacted the pre-revolution colonial era of Williamsburg and beyond. And these are stories that maybe the historical record has forgotten or has kept hidden. So we're trying to tell those stories which were once untold.
Great, thank you. I love the work that you're doing. I in the 80s, I actually lived in the Bray School for 2 years. So when
Wow.
I was in Williamsburg just last weekend for Charter Day, I was able to visit and see that as well. And so thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Suzanne, yes, please.
Um, Thank you, Jacob. That was a great talk. Oh, there we go. It's still not working, doesn't matter. So I was just wondering, what archives did you use in the project? Where did you find all this evidence that was so interesting about Blaikley? Did you travel? Were they digital? How did you find them?
So most of the things that I found were from the collections at the Rockefeller Library by the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. They have a lot of the like colonial papers for people living at the time of Blaikley. So I would say the most that I got was from them. There's also been several like edited and published editions of the like surviving wills and court documents from Williamsburg and York County that are, I mean, it's very accessible here because they're from York County and Williamsburg. So again, they have those at the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, but also Swim Library has like a bunch of resources as well. The newspapers, the Virginia Gazette, thankfully has been fairly well preserved, and that they're fairly readily accessible through like the Library of Congress. They have a pretty good database with a lot of the issues of the Virginia Gazette. All of the newspapers that mentioned Blaikley, the Virginia Gazette, those are all accessible through the Library of Congress. So kind of a mix of going to the local libraries here, and doing some digital work as well.
Thank you, Jacob. Kim, please.
Hello, Jacob.
Hello.
Apologies for missing the beginning of your presentation, but what I heard I really enjoyed. Thank you. I know, of course, that you're an English major as well as a history major, so I wondered what you brought to this project from your training as an English major.
So I think something that has helped me as an English major doing like history work is that as an English major, we're always taught to close read, very look at every single word, at every sentence, and just mine what we can from that and see what we can make meaning from. And I think that's especially um, significant when you're doing archival work on somebody who isn't well known, who isn't like throughout the archive, is just here and there. So when they do appear, when Catherine Blaikley appears in the archive, um, because I have this training in English to be such a close reader and analytical reader, I feel like I can get more meaning out of things, and interpret things more closely that maybe just another history student without that level of training might not have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us for our first ever Revolution Untold Lunch and Learn project. Our next session will be investigating Clementina Rind with student researcher Ara Johnson on March 2nd at noon. You can go ahead and scan that QR code. It'll take you to the Zoom registration session. We'd love to have you back to join us again. Or you can join our mailing list for updates and reminders by visiting us on the web at wm.edu/scp. I want to once again say that we are extremely grateful to our sponsors, the Williamsburg 250 Commission, the Society of 1918 at William and Mary, and the Virginia 250 and Virginia Humanities, and donors to Strategic Cultural Partnership, whose generous support has made this research possible. By sharing these stories, we remember more fully, understand more clearly, and expand the story of the American Revolution. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.